This creepypasta was submitted by multiple people. It was 1998, and I was 13 years old. I lived with my mom and dad in a big old house. I ignored it since I knew that my parents would be home soon, and they always yelled at me to clean up my room when they wanted to show my relatives around. I didn't care if they thought I was lazy. I continued gaming until I heard footsteps coming up the stairs. I peeked out my door and saw my mother standing there. They were all looking at some papers on the floor, and none of them noticed that I was watching them. Where did this come from? Why does it have so many empty spots? Finally, my aunt and uncle said that they wanted to go for a walk to clear their heads. I sat in bed and listened as they slowly approached my door. He looked at me with a concerned expression on his face and asked what was wrong. She gave me a confused look and told me that I probably just dreamt it. I froze, unsure of what to do. Should I call out or keep going down? Curiosity overcame me, and I continued going down. At the bottom of the stairs, I saw that the storage room door was open, and the chain that usually kept it closed was on the ground beside a pair of pliers. "Dad, are you all right?" I asked. He tried to speak, but all that came out was a gurgle. I checked his pulse, and it was still there, but he was losing consciousness. I called out for help, but nobody came. I don't know what to do. I was just a kid, and my dad was dying. I don't know how long I stayed with him, but eventually his breathing slowed and his eyes rolled back. Then he was gone. I stepped over the chain and entered the room. But when I reached the top of the stairs, I saw the same two men from the photo standing there. They looked different somehow, like they were older and somehow more shriveled than before. They both had the same surprised look on their faces as I ran past them. I called out for help, but as I made my way through the house, I saw that everyone I knew had vanished. It was like the house was empty. I went downstairs for breakfast and saw that my dad wasn't there. I asked my mom where he was, and she replied, he went to get supplies from the basement. I should have listened to her because I felt a sudden urge to go check on him. But instead, I went to the basement door and slowly opened it. I pointed towards the door and told him that someone was just in my room, checked outside to make sure that everything was all right, and told me to go back to sleep. There were boxes stacked everywhere, old furniture in the corner, and cobwebs hung from the ceiling. I had never been down here by myself before. I always hated it when my dad made me help him find things, because I was scared of what might be hiding in the shadows. The fluorescent light hanging from the ceiling flickered, making it hard to see. I walked over to where the noise came from and saw that my dad was lying on the floor next to a broken toolbox. I lied there thinking about what had just happened until I heard my dad leave my room again. A minute later, the footsteps came back, and I heard the same voice calling my name. "Wake up." This time I called out, "Who's there?" But the only reply that I got was silence. Then I heard the footsteps leave my room. Then I heard my name being called. "Come on, wake up." I sat there, frozen in fear as the footsteps got closer. "Wake up," the voice said again. I was too scared to speak. Finally, the person knocked on the door. "Go away," I whispered. "Don't be afraid," the voice said. "You need to come with me." I started crying. "No, I don't want to go." But the person opened my door and walked in. After they left, my mom let me go back to my room. I spent the next few days trying to convince myself that the picture I saw was unreally important. But every night when I tried to go to sleep, I would think about all of the secrets that my family was hiding from me. He looked away and shook his head. "Let's change the subject," he said. "Can we please go back to my room now?" I asked. But my mom stopped me. "No, you're going to spend some time with your relatives," she said. "Oh, okay." I looked over at my aunt, and she was staring at the photo with a sad expression on her face. She looked back at me and mouthed the words, "I'm sorry." Then she turned away again. I walked over and saw that they were looking at old photo albums. One of the pictures caught my eye. It was a picture of my family taken in the basement. I didn't remember taking any pictures down there. Most of the time we only went down there to check on the furnace or to get supplies from the storage room. I looked closer at the picture and realized that I wasn't in it. The photo was taken sometime during the early 60s, and it showed my mom, dad, 2 other women, and 2 men. There were 3 empty spaces where people were supposed to stand next to them. "Hey, who are these people?" I asked. She never came into my room unless she needed something or she wanted to yell at me about something, so I figured that this must be important. "Yes, Mom," I said. It had been in my family for generations, and most of the rooms were used for storage. My parents didn't want to get rid of anything. because it was either something they could use in the future or it belonged to one of their family members who no longer lived with us. This made our home feel like more of a museum than an actual house. My bedroom was one of the few rooms that was mine and mine alone. I de-decorated it with posters of bands and sports teams and filled it with all of my toys and comics. It was my sanctuary. One day after school, I was playing a new game on my computer when I heard my name being called from downstairs. "We have company," she said. "Your Aunt Carol and Uncle George are here, and they want to see your room." My dad walked in with two strange men I'd never seen before. They introduced themselves as my aunt and uncle. It seemed nice enough, and we talked about how they were doing and how they hoped to find a new place to live soon. After they left, I closed the door and went back to my game, but it was hard to concentrate. I kept hearing whispers outside my door, and sometimes I could hear muffled voices talking about things that sounded important. It was hard to play my game with all of those distractions, so I decided to go check it out. I knew that my aunt and uncle had recently gotten divorced, so I assumed that my dad had told my mom that they were welcome to stay with us for a while. "Okay," I said. But before I could get out of my room, my mom grabbed my shoulder and forced me to look at her. Her eyes were wild and she was shaking. "You're not going to make fun of them, right?" she asked. I didn't know what she was talking about. "What do you mean?" But she turned away and left without answering. I shrugged and went back to my computer. A few minutes later, I heard a knock on my door and I called out, "Come in!" I opened my door and saw my aunt and uncle talking to my dad in the hallway. My dad quickly tried to hide the photo behind his back, but I grabbed it from him. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur. I couldn't focus on anything. All I could think about was that mysterious picture. On the third night, I woke up in the middle of the night and heard footsteps coming up the stairs. I looked over and saw that it was my dad. In the morning, I told my mom that I hadn't slept a wink the night before, because I was sure that somebody was trying to get into my room. As I descended the steps, I heard a loud crash. Duh. The storage room was messy and filled with junk. He looked up at me with a terrified expression on his face. In a panic, I ran upstairs to get help. Terrified, I hid in my room until morning. When I finally emerged, I found a note on my door that read, "Check the basement."